Clara sat at her small kitchen table, stirring a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The dim glow of the overhead light cast long shadows on the faded walls of her modest apartment. Outside, the city hummed with life, cars honking in the distance, muffled conversations drifting through the thin walls. But Clara barely noticed. The exhaustion of the day clung to her, settling deep in her bones. She had spent hours at the office, followed by an evening of paperwork she had brought home. Routine had become her comfort. It kept her mind from straying too far into places she didn't want to go. She had built her life with careful precision, avoiding anything that could shake the fragile balance she had maintained for years. Just as she lifted the cup to her lips, her phone vibrated against the wooden surface, the sound abrupt in the quiet room. Unknown number. She stared at the screen, her heartbeat picking up. It wasn't often that she received calls from unknown numbers. For a fleeting moment, she considered ignoring it, letting it ring into oblivion. But something, a quiet instinct, made her reach for the phone and press it to her ear. "Hello," a soft yet firm voice responded. "Is this Clara?" Her grip on the phone tightened. "Yes, who is this?" A pause. Then the voice said something that made Clara's breath hitch. "My name is Sophia. I think I'm your daughter." The room seemed to shrink around her. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she placed her coffee down, afraid she might drop it. Her vision blurred, not from tears but from the sheer force of the emotions crashing over her. Shock, fear, confusion. It had been nearly 2 decades since she had given birth. Nearly 2 decades since she had turned her back on that part of her life. She had trained herself to forget, to move forward, to believe that what was left behind would stay behind. But now, the past was reaching out to her through the phone. "I don't know what to say," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. I just want to talk," Sophia said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Please." Clara closed her eyes. Memories she had buried deep came rushing back. The fear, the pain, the shame. The image of her mother's tear-streaked face. The hushed whispers of neighbors. The sleepless nights spent wrestling with the weight of it all. And then, the day she walked away from the tiny, fragile baby she had carried for 9 months. She had told herself it was for the best, that the child would have a better life, that it was the only way to survive. But here she was with the past knocking at her door. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. I need some time." "I understand," Sophia said, "but please don't shut me out." The call ended, but Clara remained frozen. The phone felt heavy in her hand, a lifeline to a life she had desperately tried to escape. The scars she thought had healed were suddenly raw again, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face them. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the conversation over and over again. Every word, every pause, every breath echoed in her head. Sophia, her daughter, the child she had given away all those years ago. Memories began to unfurl like an old, tattered book, pages turning against her will. She was 16 when it happened, young, naive, and full of quiet dreams. Dreams that had been shattered in a single, horrific moment. Her mother, Maria, had worked for the Reyes family since before Clara was born. The job had kept them afloat, putting food on their table and a roof over their heads. Maria had been a quiet, hard-working woman who never complained, even when she was treated as little more than an invisible presence in the grand estate. Clara had spent many summers there, helping her mother clean, dust, and run errands. She had learned early on how to move unnoticed, how to lower her gaze when the Reyes family walked by. But Gabriel Reyes had noticed her. The only son of Ana Reyes, he had been 24 at the time. Handsome, privileged, and untouchable. He was used to getting what he wanted. And what he wanted was Clara. At first it had been lingering glances, then subtle touches, his hand brushing against hers when she passed him something, his gaze holding hers for a moment too long. She had ignored it, convinced herself she was imagining things. But it had escalated. Unwelcome words whispered when no one was around. Corners where he would stand too close. His scent, the weight of his presence, the way his eyes darkened with something she didn't fully understand at the time. She had tried to avoid him. To disappear into the background as she always had. But one afternoon, when Anna went out, Maria had left for the market, and the other house staff were nowhere to be found. Gabriel had found her alone in the house. And he had raped her. Clara clutched the bedsheet, her breath coming in uneven gasps. She could still feel the cold floor against her skin, the distant hum of the air conditioner. The way the world had blurred and faded into an unbearable silence after it was over. She had run to the storeroom, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to move. She stayed there for what felt like hours, curled into herself, shaking violently until she heard her mother return. When Maria found her, Clara collapsed into her arms, choking on her own words as she tried to explain. And when she finally did, Maria had held her so tightly it hurt. But they had been powerless. The Reyes family was too powerful, too untouchable. And when Maria had finally summoned the courage to tell Anna, only after she found out Clara was pregnant, she had been met with mockery and threats. Clara still remembered the way Anna had looked at them, like they were nothing, like they were dirt under her feet. "Leave, before I make you regret ever setting foot in this house," Anna had said. They left. They had to relocate to another state because of the constant threats on their lives by the Reyes to intimidate them to silence. Now years later the fear had returned. The past she had tried to bury was clawing its way back into her life, and at the center of it all was Sophia. Clara spent the next few days in a daze, moving through her routine as if on autopilot. She went to work, completed her tasks, and responded to colleagues when necessary, but her mind remained elsewhere. The weight of the past pressed down on her, threatening to crush the careful life she had built. She had not responded to Sophia. It wasn't that she didn't want to. She just didn't know how. What could she possibly say to the daughter she had abandoned? One evening, as she sat in her apartment staring blankly at the untouched meal in front of her, her phone rang again. This time, it was a message. "Hi, I hope you're doing okay. I don't want to pressure you, but I'd really love to talk, whenever you're ready," Sophia said softly. Clara exhaled shakily. The girl was giving her space. She appreciated that, but it also meant she had no excuse to keep avoiding this. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think about what had happened after they fled the Reyes estate. She and her mother had arrived in a different town, with nothing but a few bills Maria had saved. They rented a small, cramped room in the poorer part of the city, where no one knew them. Maria found work as a cleaner in a local cafe, while Clara stayed home, battling the reality of her pregnancy. She had been 17, alone, and drowning in emotions she had no way to process. Her body changed, her movements slowed, and the weight of Gabriel's assault settled in ways she could not escape. Her mother tried to be strong, but Clara saw the pain in her eyes. They never spoke of what had happened, not in detail. Maria simply carried on, as if pretending hard enough could make it all go away. But it didn't. Clara hated the child growing inside her. It wasn't the baby's fault, but it didn't change the fact that every kick, every flutter in her womb was a reminder of what had been taken from her. Some nights she wished she could erase it all, erase herself. But her mother was always there, holding her, whispering that they would get through it. Then, Sophia was born. Clara had expected to feel something when she held her baby for the first time. Love, attachment, anything. But all she felt was emptiness. The cries of the newborn filled the tiny hospital room, but Clara only turned away, silent tears slipping down her face. Maria, however, had held Sophia with a tenderness that broke Clara's heart, and when she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "We cannot keep her." Clara had only nodded. She had already made that decision long before the birth. She couldn't be a mother. Not to this child, not when she was still drowning. Maria made the arrangements through a discreet local agency. Within a week, Sophia was placed with a family who could give her a better life. Clara never saw them. She never even asked their names. And then she moved on, or at least, she tried to. Now that past was knocking at her door. Clara stared at the message on her phone, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, she took a deep breath and typed, "I'm ready to talk." Her heart pounded as she hit send. She had no idea what she would say, no idea how this would go. But one thing was certain. She could no longer run from the past. The day Clara agreed to meet Sophia, her stomach twisted with unease. She had spent the night tossing and turning, wondering if she was making the right decision. But avoiding it hadn't worked. The past had found her, whether she was ready or not. Sophia suggested a small cafe in the heart of the city, a neutral place where neither of them held any painful memories. Clara arrived early, choosing a table in the far corner. Her hands trembled as she stirred her coffee, her eyes darting to the entrance every few seconds. Then she saw her. Sophia stepped into the cafe, scanning the room before her gaze landed on Clara. She hesitated for a brief moment, then walked forward with careful steps. As she approached, Clara's breath caught in her throat. The resemblance was undeniable. Sophia had her dark brown eyes, the same soft curl in her hair, the same delicate features that Clara had once seen in her own reflection. But there was something else, an energy, a quiet confidence that Clara had never possessed at that age. "Hi," Sophia said softly, offering a tentative smile. "Hi," Clara responded, her voice barely above a whisper. They sat in silence for a few moments, neither knowing how to begin. Clara could feel Sophia studying her, searching for something. Recognition, maybe, or a sense of belonging. Finally, Sophia spoke. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I know this must be hard." Clara exhaled slowly, gripping her coffee cup. "It is, but you deserve this conversation." Sophia nodded, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. "I don't want to overwhelm you, but I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "Ask me anything. I'll try my best to answer." Sophia hesitated before speaking. "Why did you give me up?" Clara felt the weight of those words settle deep in her chest. She had known this question was coming, but nothing could have prepared her for actually hearing it. "It wasn't because I didn't want you," Clara began, choosing her words carefully. "At the time, I was young and scared. I didn't know how to love you the way you deserved to be loved, and I wanted you to have a life I couldn't give." Sophia nodded slowly. "Did you ever think about me?" A sharp pain struck Clara's heart. "Every day, but I convinced myself it was best to let you go, to not interfere." Sophia's lips pressed together. "I used to wonder if you regretted it," she said. Clara's eyes stung with unshed tears. "I regretted how everything happened. I regretted that you had to be born from something so painful, but I never regretted you." Sophia's gaze softened. "I don't remember them. My adoptive parents, they passed away when I was young. I grew up in foster care," she said slowly. Clara's heart sank. "I'm so sorry," she said. Sophia offered a small, sad smile. "It wasn't all bad, but I always felt like something was missing. That's why I searched for you." Clara reached out hesitantly, and to her relief, Sophia didn't pull away. Their hands touched, and for the first time a warmth spread through Clara's chest. "I don't know how to do this," Clara admitted, "but if you're willing, I'd like to try." Sophia's eyes glistened with emotion. Me too. As they sat there, the years of separation didn't disappear, but they no longer felt insurmountable. For the first time in decades, Clara felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Clara walked home from the cafe with a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Meeting Sophia had been more overwhelming than she had imagined. The young woman's presence had stirred up memories Clara had spent years trying to bury. As she stepped into her small apartment, she closed the door behind her and leaned against it, exhaling heavily. She had agreed to meet Sophia again, but the thought of opening up further terrified her. Would Sophia still want to know her once she learned the truth about how she had come into the world? Clara wasn't sure she could face the shame that had clung to her for decades. That night, sleep eluded her. Instead, she found herself staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the past. The shadows of her trauma pressed down on her like a heavy weight. She had spent years convincing herself that she had moved on, but tonight proved otherwise. The next morning, Clara found herself sitting at the small wooden table in her kitchen, staring at an old box she had hidden away for years. Inside were fragments of a past she had tried to forget, letters she had never sent, a single photograph of her mother, and a faded piece of cloth from the baby blanket she had once wrapped around Sophia. She ran her fingers over the fabric, feeling its softness against her skin. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mama, what should I do?" she whispered to the silence around her. Her mother had been her anchor, the one who had held her when she broke down, the one who had sacrificed everything to protect her. Losing Maria had been one of the hardest moments of Clara's life. And now, she faced another moment just as difficult, allowing herself to reconnect with the daughter she had once let go. A knock at the door startled her out of her thoughts. Clara hesitated before getting up to answer it. "You didn't answer my calls. I got worried," Camila said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Clara forced a smile. "I'm sorry, I've just been caught up in something." Camila crossed her arms. "Something or someone? You look like you haven't slept. What's going on?" Clara hesitated. She had never told Camila about her past. Her friend had always known her as the independent, hardworking woman who had built a life from nothing. But the weight of keeping this secret felt unbearable now. Clara swallowed hard. "I met someone yesterday, someone I never thought I'd see again." Camila's eyes widened. "Who?" Clara inhaled deeply, then exhaled. "My daughter." The room fell silent. Camila blinked, processing the words. Wait, you had a child? Clara, why didn't you ever tell me?" Clara looked away. "Because it's tied to a past I never wanted to relive." Camila sat down at the table, gesturing for Clara to do the same. "Tell me, please." For the first time in years, Clara spoke about everything. The assault, the fear, the pain of carrying a child she had struggled to love, and the impossible choice of giving Sophia up. Tears gushed from her eyes, but she didn't stop. When she finished, Camila, already in tears, leaned closer and pulled Clara into a tight hug. "You've carried this alone for so long," Camila whispered. "You don't have to anymore." Clara let out a shaky breath. "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be what she needs." Camila gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be there. Start with that." Clara nodded slowly, the knot in her chest loosening just a little. Maybe, just maybe, she could try. Days passed, and Clara found herself walking the fine line between fear and hope. She had met Sophia once more since their first meeting, but the conversations remained surface level. Sophia hadn't pushed for details about the past, and Clara hadn't volunteered them. Yet, deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before the inevitable questions surfaced. One evening, Clara received a text from Sophia. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something I need to ask you. Clara stared at the message, her heart pounding. She hesitated before replying. As she set her phone down, an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. She had tried so hard to keep the darkest parts of her story buried. But she couldn't keep them from Sophia forever. The truth was clawing its way to the surface. The next day, Clara arrived at the cafe early again, her nerves fraying with every passing minute. When Sophia walked in, Clara noticed the tension in her expression. The young woman sat down, clasping her hands together before looking directly at Clara. "I need to know the truth," Sophia said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "About my father." Clara felt her stomach drop. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for it. "Sophia," Clara's voice wavered. "It's complicated." Sophia's eyes glistened, but she held her gaze. "Please, I deserve to know." Clara inhaled deeply, gripping her cup as if it could anchor her. "Your father, he wasn't a good man. He wasn't someone I loved or even chose." Clara's throat tightened, the words refusing to come out. She clenched her fists, fighting the nausea rising within her. Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes, and her breath hitched. He hurt you, didn't he?" Clara swallowed hard and gave a small, pained nod. "Yes, he forced himself on me, and when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I was so young, and I didn't know what to do. I never wanted you to suffer because of how you came into this world." Tears slipped down Sophia's cheeks, but she didn't look away. "All my life I wondered about him. If he ever looked for me, if he even knew I existed. But now I wish I had never asked." Clara reached for Sophia's hand hesitantly. "I am so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hide the truth from you, but I also never wanted you to carry the weight of my pain." Sophia wiped her tears and exhaled shakily. "You suffered so much, alone. I wish I had known sooner." Clara shook her head. "No, Sophia, my suffering is not yours to bear. What matters now is that you're here. That we have a chance to know each other, despite everything." Sophia took a moment before squeezing Clara's hand in return. "I don't know where we go from here, but I don't want to walk away. I want to know you." A piece of Clara's heart felt lighter. The past could never be erased, but maybe, just maybe, she could still have a future with her daughter. "We take it one step at a time," Clara whispered. A week had passed since Clara had told Sophia the truth. The weight that had sat so heavily on her chest for years had finally begun to lift. Clara had requested that Sophia moved in with her, and she has accepted. One quiet Sunday morning, Clara had told Sophia to get ready. She was going to take her to meet someone. They stopped by a florist to get white lily. Clara took Sophia to Maria's grave. It was the first time she had brought anyone here. She knelt, tracing the engraved name with her fingers. "She was the strongest woman I ever knew," Clara said softly. "She gave up everything to protect me. And when I thought I had nothing left, she reminded me that I did. She would have loved you." Sophia knelt beside her. "I wish I had met her, but maybe, in some way, she's part of me too." Clara nodded, blinking back tears. "She is." A comfortable silence settled between them before Sophia pulled out her phone. "I wanted to show you this. I did some digging. Gabriel Reyes was arrested 5 years ago and is currently serving time. Fraud, embezzlement, and assault were his crime. His family couldn't protect him anymore." Clara stared at the screen, processing the words. A part of her had feared that Gabriel would always remain untouchable, shielded by wealth and influence. But fate had finally caught up with him. "Justice took its time," Clara murmured. "But it came." Sophia reached for her hand. "And now we can finally move forward together." Clara allowed herself to believe those words. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She looked at Sophia and saw not just the echoes of her trauma, but the promise of something new, love, healing, and a future she never thought possible. As they walked away from the grave, hand in hand, Clara knew that while the scars would remain, they no longer held power over her. Healing wasn't easy, but through therapy and time they found strength in each other. It was time to embrace life anew, together. Pain leaves its mark, but so does healing. Clara's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to endure, to fight, and to rise again. Life may not erase the past, but it offers new beginnings to those who dare to embrace them. To anyone carrying unspoken scars, remember this: you are more than what happened to you. The past may shape you, but it does not define you. Like Clara, you can choose to step forward, not in fear, but in hope. Vocabulary building. Let's learn some words from these stories. Relocate. To move to a different place. Example, they had to relocate to another state because of the constant threats on their lives. Trauma. Deep emotional pain or distress caused by a difficult experience. Example, the trauma she endured did not have to control her future. Intimidate. To frighten or threaten someone in order to control them. Example, the Rays tried to intimidate them into silence. Justice, fairness, or the process of holding someone accountable for wrongdoing. Example, his family couldn't protect him anymore. Justice took its time, but it came. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, and see you in the next story.